Today's video should be a simple, not very complicated, Cattleya type orchid repot. All of this and more coming up at The Orchid Hut. Welcome back to The Orchid Hut. My name is Dana, and in the brief introduction when I mentioned a simple repot, I'm crossing my fingers that that's actually true today for this Cattleya type orchid. Now, you've seen this one before in my collection. It is tagged as Potinara Naomi's Delight. Of course, that has now been reclassified to Cattleya Naomi's Delight, and it is an award-winning orchid. So hopefully the camera can focus in on that tag, and if it doesn't, I will type it in when I'm editing the video. And this one has bloomed once for me in the past. I'll put a picture of that bloom when I'm editing this video. And what has happened in the last, I would say, year and a half, and it's probably been in this pot now 2 years, but in the last year and a half or so, the oldest part of the rhizome has died back, and all of the growths that were on the older part of the rhizome have died and lost their leaves and become dry. Now, I don't think this is particularly a problem. However, the new growth over here is not really keeping up with how much of the plant is dying back, and so the plant is becoming smaller. That's a bit of a concern. And what's inside the pot does not look to have a particularly robust root system. So as I'm taking this out today, I'm already anticipating that I'm going to have to downsize the pot. And sometimes that is necessary when you're repotting if you run into a poor root system. So this is an older pot that I've cleaned. It's had some extra holes poked in the side for aeration and for airflow. I may be using that one. This is even smaller, and I have a feeling this one will be too small, but I have both of those on standby just in case. And I have my media ready to go. This is just the Cattleya pre-made mix from Repot Me. Nothing special going on there. And we're going to take this one out of the pot and see what's going on. I'm expecting a poor root system, and I am expecting media on the floor. Sometimes you can repot and put, right back into the same pot. I have a feeling that this one is not even going to need that large of a pot, because I think the root system is struggling here, which, is a bit of an indication that, the plant is going to shrink along with the shrinking root system. So let me take this stake out and just gently working off the old media here. And while I'm doing this, I will give you a kitty cat update. So if you've watched my last video, or maybe two, I can't quite remember now, but we fostered the kittens. All the kittens got wonderful homes, and then it was time to figure out something to do with the feral mama cat, because we didn't want her to keep having kittens in the neighborhood. It just can get out of control in a hurry. So, she's wild. Oh, wild, wild. But I was able to get her accustomed to eating her meals in a safe trap, and I zip tied it open, and I just was feeding her inside this cage. And when we were able to get an appointment for her to be spayed, I took the zip tie off and she got caught. Well, that was a bit traumatic for her. She much didn't care for being in Hotel California overnight. And the next morning she was spayed successfully, but she nearly tore up the entire vet's office and the vet tech. They thought they had her sedated, but it didn't quite take hold. And they went to grab her, and she nearly took some arms off. And then, we got her back, and she was in a dog kennel outside for about 24 hours because you really just can't just release them right off. So we kept her in that. She didn't care for that kennel situation. She flipped her water bowl, flipped her food bowl, dug all the litter out of the litter box that was in there. There was a little blanket in there for her to lay on. She drug the blanket through the entire mess. Oh, she was just a pistol. And so we finally released her. She disappeared for about 2 days, but she's back. After about 2 days, she came back because she knew this was a good thing. She gets food here. Nobody molests her. So, yeah, I have a feral cat that hisses at me. Fun times. Okay, so all of the media is gone. And as I suspected, not very many living roots here. All right, so let's start trimming. This, these pruners here are already sterilized. Let me cut this right here, and I don't think I'm going to be cutting into any living tissue. We'll see. No, it's a dead rhizome. You can tell right there that that's, just as dry as can be. And this part I have cut off is not going to affect the plant at all. All of these roots are dead, and that would, be as expected. The older part of the rhizome has the older root system, and that's the root system that will die back first. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, I have one more sort of dead stem here. Let's just go ahead and get that off as it flies across the kitchen. And now I'm checking these roots because this is not great. You see how there's a lot of stringy roots where the velamen is missing altogether, and that's not supporting the plant. So we are going to be trimming. And it will rapidly become obvious why there is no reason in the world to put this back in such a large pot. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, lots of dead roots here. So we're just going to keep on trimming. I'm checking every single one for substance. If you feel like it's the least bit thick or, has something about it that's, feels like it's more solid, then don't cut it off. But you can just tell, this is just peeling away here from the string of the root. So all of that over time just begins to decay in the pot. It will make the media become more acidic, which is not something that you're really striving for. So, when you repot and you take the time to get rid of the dead roots, you're actually helping your new media not become acidic as quickly. Okay, so this root, oh goodness, am I going to have a totally rootless orchid? No, there's one root. There's one root that is living. This orchid better get in high gear and put down some new roots. Now this is the growth right here that would be expected to put down new roots. And so the problem with this is that now that I'm looking at it closely, it's very black on the stem right there. So there is some sort of rot going on here. Look how bendy it is. And it has become very soft, and therefore we're going to have to lose this leaf. Now let's remove it right about here. I'm going to check to see that the tissue looks okay. Let me step aside off camera just real quickly and I'm going to get a little bit of cinnamon. top. And even though that looks very, very dry and dead right there, I'm going to put a little bit of cinnamon on it. Okay, so what are we depending on now? We are depending on this one root to continue to keep the orchid hydrated. We are also depending on one of the back pseudobulbs to be able to still send up a bud for a new leaf, which is possible. I don't know if it's possible for this orchid, but it is possible in the orchid world. So we have kind of gotten to a situation here where this orchid was fooling me a little bit. I didn't quite think it was maybe quite this bad off, but lo and behold it is. So now we're almost kind of into a save the orchid situation. Alright, so not going to need all this media. And yes, we are going to the small pot. Alright, let me get this mess cleaned up. And I think I will be spraying this one with 3% hydrogen peroxide, and I'll be back to do the repot. Okay, be right back. Okay, so off camera I sprayed with 3% hydrogen peroxide, and then I reapplied the cinnamon because it was a little bit damp at that point and it stuck a little bit better. And so now all we need to do is going to repot, and yeah, we're going with the tiniest pot at this point. So, you know, there's not going to be much to this. I'm going to hope for the best here because, you know, this was a really nice orchid when it bloomed. I did not think it was struggling until I saw what was inside the pot. So the idea here is that hopefully one of the back bulbs will decide to put up a new growth. Sooner rather than later, because I'm not sure how long, you know, that one root is going to be able to keep this hydrated. So we're going to kind of just have to wait and see. I have potted it a bit low on purpose just to keep it from feeling overwhelmed by the media. And I'm putting in a new stake because I don't want to reintroduce something that might have been going on even with that wooden stake that was previously in this pot. Piece of tree debris. And we're staking it, you know, to kind of stabilize it here. Alright. So, I'm happy with how this turned out given the circumstances. I am going to water this really well. And I think I'm going to put it back outside in, you know, a very warm growing area, and hopefully that will kind of spur this Cattleya on to grow some new leaves for me, and hopefully it will bloom again someday. Okay, so if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. The subscribe button is coming up in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, and don't forget that notifications bell to let you know when I've posted something new. Thank you all so much for watching, and talk to you next time.